When you're first learning to run agility courses, there's a lot of things to remember. What direction you're going, what the obstacle is, your handling choices are all things that you have to consider both on your walkthrough and real time when you're running the course. Today, I'm hoping to provide some tools and techniques that I've found very helpful for myself in remembering the course as numbered. This specific course was brought to me by one of my students. I have simplified it by taking out some of the obstacles and making some of the lines a little bit better. This is not what I would necessarily consider a great course. This is not to certain organizational standards, but this is the specific course that was brought to me as a challenge to remember. One of the first things I look at, whether I'm looking at a course map or whether I'm walking the course on the ground, is curves. So rather than looking at a course as a 1 to 18 numbered obstacle, remembering 18 different things, I try and look at how many obstacles fit on a logical curve. And that usually subdivides it into 3 to 6 pieces, which is much more reasonable for me to remember. As you can see in this example, the dog would be on left and I am going to the right. Generally speaking, I am on the inside of the curve and the dog is on the outside of the curve because the dog can run faster than I can, and the dog tends to curl into the handler by default. In the second part of the course, you can see that there is another curve where the dog is on my right and I'm going to the left, which tells me that I'm going to have to do something between 3 and 4, but it doesn't matter right now because I'm just remembering curve. So we're curving to the right, now we're curving to the left. And in the third component, you can see 7 all the way to 13 to me is just one curve. There may be different, again, handling aspects that we look at as we go, but this is a remembering technique. So it went to the right, to the left, to the right. And now for the final curve, I'm going to be going to the left and the dog is on my right. You'll notice at this point, I have not taken into any handling considerations, any challenge zones. This is literally building a muscle memory of right to left to right to left so that I can remember that on course. Generally, what I do is I look at the challenge spots after I have a base understanding of that course. And of course, the challenge spots are going to depend on you, your dog, your skills, any training challenges that you're having. So, as I'm looking at this, I'm looking at it more from the lens of my dog, where I would probably have to be aware or supporting, and that may not be the same for you. So, I've redrawn our first curve where the dog is on the left and we're going to the right. And you'll notice I've taken away the jumps because to me, for my dog, I do not have to support every single jump. If I set my dog up on that curve, chances are he's going to take any and all obstacles on that curve, which really means that I only have to remember one jump in this first segment. In the second segment, you can see very similarly, I've taken out the jumps and I've put that final jump before I have to switch sides. So now I have to just remember that jump. I've taken away the others on the curve. Right loop, very similarly, there's a very big loop and there's many jumps on that line, but again, it doesn't really matter. All I have to think about is the jump that comes up near the side change or near the handling challenge. And you can see that it's themed. I've kind of color coded these blue and pink to kind of show the different sides that me and or my dog would be on. Generally, again, my dog is on the outside in these diagrams, the handler is on the inside. That may change with your dog depending on the course, etc. Again, you'll notice I have not done any handling analysis at this point. I do not want to think about how I'm handling before I understand the course. That is a layer on top. If I start thinking about how I'm going to handle things before I remember the course, I am much more likely personally to get lost. And I'm also much more likely to just start executing, even if it is incorrect. My dog is in the wrong spot because I walked the course with the this is where I do the front cross methodology. So instead, at this point, I'm just thinking I'm going to have to make a change. I'm going to have to make a side change, not sure how I'm going to do it. And that I do on my second walkthrough. So I walk through very quickly, just choosing sides, and then I'm going to do a second walkthrough to decide my handling skills or my handling choices based on my skills. And in this last diagram, you can kind of see putting it together. So it's blue curve to pink curve to blue curve to pink curve. So I've taken that course, which may have looked a little bit more challenging at the outset, and I have basically separated into about one, two, three, four parts. So there's only four things that I have to remember from a flow perspective. And then I can do some analysis on where I might find challenges based on my fast dog, my slow dog, my sticky dog, my dog that tends to fly off and take things if I don't tell him to turn too quickly. So this one is the actual course, again, with some modifications that was provided to me by my student, wondering how to remember uh, this type of course when there's a little bit more handling. The curves may not seem as obvious, and there's reuse of the same jump. You're crossing back over the same jump. I remember the course the same way. I typically remember the course using those same techniques, which I'll highlight here. And I again think about how I'm going to handle or where I'm going to be precisely after I do that first analysis of side changes. And one of the things that I want to call out as we're doing this, if you go back and look at the first diagram versus the second diagram of the blue and pink, you're going to notice there's a lot of similarities because even though the course has changed, even though it looks so much more complicated, most of agility tends to be on a curve, at least at this point of this recording. Straight lines are a different challenge, and I haven't seen them as much in the last couple of years. Using that same process, I think of how far can I run before I'm going to need to switch sides? How many obstacles are on the same curve? To me, this is about one, two, three, and I'm putting this as dog on left and I'm going to the right. Could you walk out, lead out, stare over one and two, then go to three? Absolutely. That is a skill thing that you can analyze based on you and your dog. This is just assuming some very general criteria. You're going to notice a very similar curve, 4, 5, 6. Most folks can run these three obstacles. So, one of the purposes of segregating these into pieces, into chunks, is that the overall course can become overwhelming. But if you break it up into chunks of 3 to 4 jumps, most students or most competitors will have the skill to do those 3 jumps in a row, even if stitching it all together can be challenging. In this one, 789, you're going to notice that the line is curved. I'm still going to kind of be going to the right. The way I would probably handle this is on the south side of 7, 8, and 9, which means that, yes, I'm going to have to do handling. I may do a blind cross or a threadle or something. But at the end of the day, to me, even though the jump is curving different directions, I am generally still running either a straight line or something that is curving slightly to the right. Once again, we have that pretty big loop of 10, 11, 12, 13, all going the same direction, all on the same curve, no dog side changes anticipated. And very similar to the first course that I showed, the dog is going to be on the right, and you are generally probably going to be going to the left. So just a curved line. So at this point, I've taken those 18 obstacles and kind of dumbed it down, if you will, into just 5 chunks, 5 things that I have to remember. And again, usually at this point is where I'm going to start thinking about, okay, so there's 5 things I have to remember, right to left to right to left. What else do I have to consider from a handling challenge perspective? This is something that would be very difficult to unilaterally say what is a challenge because it is so unique to the handler and dog. But what I've done is tried to put 2 lenses on this. One, if I was to handle this with my fast dog, who has a lot of obstacle commitment and who is going to take obstacles unless I tell him to turn in a timely manner, versus my other dog who tended to be very sticky. And if I peeled off an obstacle, may not do it unless I was physically there to support him. So for my sticky dog Rumple, I would be looking at this from the perspective of I'm going to probably have to run this course side by side, sidecar with him, being close to every jump because he doesn't tend to do it if I'm not there. Rumple's retired now, but when he was still running, he didn't have a lead out. If I led him out, he would become demotivated, which means that I would be running from the number 1 to the number 3. That means that I'm going to, for this particular dog, have to run pretty quickly to get up there. 4, 5, and 6, no issues. 6 may be an issue for my other dog, but he's going to be very sticky onto me, so I wouldn't anticipate any problems there. 7 and 8, for my other dog, his line would very likely carry him to number 8 very naturally. For this specific dog, he doesn't jump with much speed and he jumps very close to the jump, which means that there's a high probability that he would take the wrong side of 8 if I was kind of heading south, thinking about pulling him in for number 9. So that may mean I need to think about going to the north side of 8 and 9, or doing a blind cross, doing a threadle, whatever works for you and your dog. The purpose of this is just to illustrate that different dogs on the same course are going to have different challenges. So in this first section, you can see 1, 2, 3. I've already said it's just a loop to the right. So 1 and 2 to me don't look particularly challenging. Number 3, if I was planning on handling it to the right, will my dog go to the backside or do I need to push the line? With my dog Dango, he would probably be already committed to number 3, basically on landing at number 2. So that may not be a challenge for him, but it may be a challenge for another dog. 4, 5, 6. Not much to say there from that curve perspective. It's just a curve to the left. But for my dog that has a lot of obstacle commitment, because I'm going to be running through that space, there's a chance that he may go to the backside of number 16 or the front side of number 16, which is not something that I would want. So most dogs have it's a pro or con. So if your dog has a lot of obstacle commitment and speed, they generally may tend to go off course, versus the dogs that are more sticky never go off course, but you have to be there to support. So I need to think about, for number 6, what do I need to do and how soon do I need to do it to turn? And then again, 7, 8, 9, nothing much from that curve perspective. If I sent my dog Dango over number 6, 7, 8, he would be going forward. I don't think I would need to support that very much. He jumps far enough at his 16-inch jump height that there wouldn't be much to support. So I need to think about, what do I need to do to get him to go to the non-obvious side of 9? For this particular dog, 10, 11, 12, 13, really a non-issue, probably number 14 as well. He is so fast and so committed that chances are around the 50, 60 mark, around the jump 11, I would be peeling off to think about the next jump. That is not the same for every dog. This is just this particular dog that I'm looking at it through this lens. So I don't have to think about 10, 11, 12, 13. 14 probably don't have to think about, but then I have to think about 15. So I have to think about, will my dog carry forward to number 15 on his own, or do I need to do something to support that line happening? So now that I've identified my tricky areas, I don't need to worry so much about the non-tricky areas, which means that my 1, 2, 3 becomes 1. Similarly, 4, 5, 6, I have to think about what I'm going to do between 6 and 7. So every curve in this course, some of the courses are much more complex, but in this course, every curve is corresponding with one challenge or one side change or one thing I have to think about. So at this point, I have 5 things to remember: a curve with a challenge, 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 and finally this curve with this challenge. So it's taken 18 things to remember plus all your challenges and simplified it to 5 pieces, 5 components, 5 things to think about. If you find yourself becoming overwhelmed with remembering courses, especially on the day of a trial, when courses can come very fast and furious, especially if you're not running at the higher levels where the classes are bigger, this is something that I find very helpful. And this also applies in a very significant way to snooker, because then I'm not thinking about the obstacles that I'm not going to take. I'm only thinking about the curve and how to get to the obstacles that I am taking. If you are at the point when you are not gambling about like a bunny and you have a plan going into gambles, this can also be very helpful, because when you start to think about everything on a curve, even if you miss an obstacle but you're still on that curve and gamble, it allows you to carry forward, not become discombobulated, not slow down, and maybe inadvertently pull your dog into you when you really want them to continue forward. So, on that last curve where I had mentioned that 15 may be a challenge, if I was doing gamble and it wasn't the final gamble and we missed 15, I may just simply run by it if I think that by going back, my dog is going to click into me and I'm going to create challenges with either the mini or the main gamble. I hope this has been helpful and that you can take it away and apply it to the courses you run.